Minwei Chi Nan. Chapter 146. On the road to the capital. Manman faced his Gurgr with an unusual dependency and gave him a sweet smile. Gurgr, I want birds. When we stop, let Lao Dai catch. Yuan looked back at Lei Tie with inquiring eyes. Lei Tie nodded. Qin Mian had seen the way his family's big poker face and small poker face communicated with each other countless times, but he still couldn't refrain from smiling at it. It was a pity that there was an outsider, otherwise, he would definitely pounce on them and kiss them. When Lei Xiongji noticed the tender expression in Qin Mian's eyes as he looked at Lei Tie, Yuan, and Manman, his eyes became filled with happiness and joy. All of a sudden, he felt embarrassed, thinking that he was disturbing the family of four. He found a topic of conversation. Eldest sister-in-law, I can see that Yuan and Manman are very smart. I'll be perfectly satisfied if Chong can be half as good as them in the future. Chong was his and Li Shi's son, only 2 months old. Wu Lang, you're a future palace graduate, how can your son be lacking, joked Qin Mian. Lei Xiongji laughed and cupped his hands in respect as he said, thank you for your words of blessing. Qin Mian took out a book from the drawer and handed it to him, for you to pass the time. But the 2 little boys are very noisy, I'm afraid you won't be able to enjoy reading it. No, Lei Xiongji received the book, children should be lively. Near noon, the entourage arrived in Zhaoyang County. Huo Sirui, Buletin Qingyun, Zhao Tianhe, and Chu Zongwen were all present. Buletin Qingyun introduced everyone to one another. Among them, an escort surnamed Zhang had been to the capital several times and could lead the way at the front of the procession, which was convenient to arrange the daily course of the journey reasonably, lest they missed the lodging place. Qin Mian opened his mouth and said, well, find a wine house first and let Tie treat us all to a meal. Buletin Qingyun hurriedly said, eldest sister-in-law, I heard from Xiongji that you and Dagur especially moved forward your schedule for our behalf. It should be us who should treat you and Dagur to a meal. Qin Mian shook his head with a smile. There's no hurry. When you all become palace graduates, then treat us to a meal. By that time, our family of 4 will be very happy to be in your light. Hearing what he said, Huo Sirui and the others had to give up. Hence, Lei Tie treated them to lunch. The group of people had lunch in the county. While at it, they bought some dried food before setting out to the north. The group added up to 4 carriages and nearly 20 people. The procession was not small. After Lei Xiongji went to Huo Sirui's carriage, Qin Mian's group of 4 people and a wolf were much more at ease. Qin Mian and Lei Tie gently rubbed Yuan and Manman's stomachs to aid digestion. The 2 little boys were so comfortable in their father's arms that they hummed. Qin Mian and Lei Tie played with the 2 children for a while before putting the bed together and let the children take a nap. Owing to the carriage's special tires, it didn't jolt even though the road was not very smooth. The 2 little boys slept very well. Qin Mian took off his shoes and climbed on the bed, lazily leaning against Lei Tie's chest. As soon as Lei Tie placed his hand on Qin Mian's abdomen, Qin Mian shrunk away. What are you doing? Rub, help digestion. Lei Tie said it with a poker face, but his big palm went into Qin Mian's lapel and ambiguously drew a circle on Qin Mian's waist. Qin Mian took out his hand and held it tightly to keep it from moving. He said with a severe countenance, Tie, don't look down upon Dian Bai. Dian Bai unenthusiastically looked at them. Lei Tie incomprehensibly looked at it, I didn't. Qin Mian patted him on the shoulder. Have you ever heard of the word lecture? Do you think Dian Bai didn't know what we're doing? Woo, Dian Bai nodded its head, acting as though it was taking this matter very seriously. Lei Tie's hand stiffened. He suppressed his intention and removed his hand before he tidied up his wife's clothes and hugged him tightly. Then, he said in a low voice, sleep a while if you're sleepy. Qin Mian shook his head, want to eat fruit. From the magical space, Lei Tie took out 3 peaches, peeled the skin and cut it into pieces before he served it in a fruit bowl and fed it to his wife with a bamboo fork. Yuan and Manman woke up after nearly an hour's nap. LIAN used warm water to wash their faces and brush their teeth. Yuan crawled to the window and looked at the strange scenery outside. "Dad, where are we going?" "To a very interesting place. It's very far away. It takes many days to get there." "Is Yuan scared?" Mian prepared fruit for Yuan and Manman. Yuan shook his head, "Not scared. Lao Dai is here, Ah Dai is here, and Didi is also here." Mian curled his lips. "Fine." Ever since LIAN had shown his qinggong and leaped to the top of the tree in front of Yuan and Manman, in Yuan and Manman's hearts, their Lao Dai was still more powerful than their Ah Dai even if their Ah Dai also leaped to the top of the tree. "Our Yuan is the best." Mian cupped the little one's face and kissed it. "Lao Dai, I want to pee-pee." Manman squirmed in LIAN's arms. LIAN opened the door, held Manman, and let him aim to the outside to pee. He looked at Yuan. Yuan nodded. Yuan also wants to pee-pee. Manman saw that the line of the urine coming out was crooked and thought it was very interesting. Curious, he asked, "Lao Dai, why is the pee crooked?" Mouth agape, LIAN didn't know how to explain it. He turned to look at Mian, "Wife." Mian sweated, "Air. The wind blows it." How could he explain inertia to a kid under 3 years old? "Why does it crooked when the wind blows it?" asked Manman yet again. Yuan also looked at Mian, waiting for an answer. Mian sweated, "Because the wind is stronger." "All right, Manman. You're going to eat fruit soon, can't talk about pee anymore." LIAN curved his lips as he served Yuan and Manman. After putting things in order, the family of 4 sat on the settee and ate the fruit. At sunset, the fleet of carriages stopped in front of an old temple. Bulatin King Yun took the lead in jumping out of the carriage and ran to Mian's carriage. "Dagur and eldest sister-in-law, in front of us is an abandoned old temple. We will rest here tonight, it might cause Yuan and Manman to feel wronged." "It's fine." Mian opened the door. "King Yun, please tell the 4 big brothers that there is a bed in our carriage. So, we don't have to delay the journey for the sake of Yuan and Manman's comfort. I forgot to say it before. Those 4 big brothers have taken a lot of trouble." "It's nothing." Bulatin King Yun said with a smile, "They like Yuan and Manman. Just now, they even said that the children are so cute. Eldest sister-in-law, let me help you to get them out of the carriage, they won't be scared, right?" "No." "Then, I'll be troubling you." Mian handed Yuan over to him. Bulatin King Yun was very happy. He carefully took Yuan, put him safely on the ground and took Manman next before he squatted down in front of them. Yuan and Manman can call me Uncle King Yun." Yuan and Manman looked at Mian. After getting their dad's nod, they both called out Uncle King Yun very cleverly. Bulatin King Yun had not married yet, so he still had a childish temperament. He held both children's hands. "Come, I'll take you 2 to play." Dian Bai was like a guard, following them without haste. On that side, the 4 escorts had gone to the temple to clean up. Mian motioned for Lei and the others to help. Although the temple was old, its walls and roof were not broken, so there was no problem to sheltering here for the night. Several people broke off a few branches to make brooms and swept the temple. Lei Zhong, Lei Shun, and the 2 escorts picked up some branches nearby to make a fire. Everyone took a break and settled their own dinner. In the first place, going out on a journey was not easy. Basically, people tried to prepare some good rations and made themselves eat better within their ability. For example, double-layered pancakes stuffed with meat, steamed stuffed buns, baked sesame seed-coated pancake, and so on could be eaten after they were roasted on the fire. Mian was more prepared because there were Yuan and Manman around. He even brought a 3-eared pot which could be tied with a rope to hang over the fire while cooking soup. Simple vermicelli and minced meat soup sprinkled with a handful of dried scallions were very fragrant. Everyone, including the 4 escorts, swallowed their saliva in secret. Qin Mian told Lei Qin Lei, "Go and bring over the fermented tofu we brought." "Yes, little master." Manman chimed in, "Dad, fermented tofu is delicious. Manman likes it, too." Qin Mian rubbed his little head. After Lei Qin Lei brought the fermented tofu jar, Qin Mian handed it to Lei Xiangji and said to everyone, "If you'd like, try it. It tastes very good if you put the fermented tofu on the pancake." Chu Zongwen, Escort Zhang, and the others expressed their gratitude with a smile. Such a big jar of fermented tofu cost 1 tael. It didn't mean that they couldn't afford it, but it was not convenient to bring along. It was a wonderful thing to be able to taste the fermented tofu while one was traveling. Each person had a share of half a piece of fermented tofu. They spread a thin layer on the pancake or steamed stuffed bun and took a bite. The fresh and savory taste was captivating, leading a person to endless aftertastes. When the soup had been cooked, Qin Mian and Lei Tie began to bake pancakes. Qin Mian made the pancakes himself. He mixed in minced meat when he needed the dough before making the pancake. This way, the pancake would be easier to heat over the fire. After the pancakes were done, Qin Mian's family of 4, together with Lei Qin Lei, Lei Qin Zhong, Lei Qin Shun, and the manservant Dashan, each had a bowl. There were only 8 bowls, so the rest didn't get a share. Yuan and Manman happily sat on their Lao Dai and Ah Dai's thighs while being fed a mouthful of fragrant meat pancake and a mouthful of delicious soup. They were very happy. "Lao Dai, eat." Yuan grabbed Lei Tie's hand and delivered the meat pancake to his mouth. Lei Tie bit a small mouthful and touched his son's head. "Lao Dai will eat when Yuan is full." Manman learned from his gurgr and let Qin Mian have a bite. "Ah Dai, eat." "All right." Qin Mian took a bite with a smile and then continued to feed him. A warm and loving family of 4 was envied by others. That night, Lei Xiangji and the others unrolled their own blankets to rest in the temple. Meanwhile, Qin Mian's family of 4 slept in the carriage. They had a good night's dream. Lei Qin Lei, Lei Qin Zhong, Lei Qin Shun, and Dashan were a group, while the 4 escorts were a group. Every night, 1 person in each group were assigned to keep vigil in the first half of the night and another for the second half of the night. This was to ensure that all the scholars could have a good rest. On top of that, there was a magical wolf, so everyone was sleeping at ease. After dawn, Lei Xiangji and the others were more or less suffering from backache. Upon seeing Qin Mian's family of 4 came down from the carriage neatly dressed and energetic, they were envious. Yuan and Manman greeted good morning to the uncles one by one. The large group of people liked the 2 little boys even more. While Lei Tie prepared breakfast, Yuan and Manman followed Qin Mian to do morning exercises. Lei Xiangji and the others watched the 2 little boys doing exercises while moving their muscles and bones. Being enraptured over it, they called the boys adorable. After a simple breakfast, the group continued on their way while the weather was fine. When all was said and done, it was inconvenient to have outsiders around. Qin Mian had expected this for a long time, so he prepared a lot of snacks in the magical space, such as small steamed meat-filled dumplings, steamed dumplings, glutinous rice rolls, and so on. He pretended to take them out of the cabinet and put them on the table to give preferential treatment to his family of 4. The boys were still too young and it's unreasonable to expect them to keep secrets, so Qin Mian didn't tell them about the existence of the magical space for the time being. Lei Tie used his vital energy to heat the food and the family of 4 pleasantly enjoyed their food. So did Dian Bai, as Qin Mian had specially made dried meat for it to eat. It began to rain in the afternoon, but it wasn't much. The procession continued on their journey. They had been on the road for 5 days and it rained for 5 days. Yuan and Manman were a little sullen due to this. Qin Mian and Lei Tie had to rack their brains to play new games with the boys. When they thought that they were about to run out of inspiration soon, the sky finally cleared up. End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 147. A young man that looks like Qin Mian. Several coachmen made the same choice without prior discussion and stopped the carriages. Everyone hurriedly got out of the carriages and stretched their legs. Before it got dark, the procession entered a county town and stopped in front of an inn. Two very bookish, scholarly youths walked out of the inn side by side. Upon seeing Lei Xiangji, Huo Siryui, and the others, the youths gave them friendly smiles. Presumably, they also must be going to the capital for the exam. After settling down in the inn, Qin Mian and the others went downstairs to the lobby to have a meal. The two scholars were also eating. When they suddenly saw a giant wolf standing beside the table, they were both surprised and scared. Then, upon seeing a cute little child feeding the wolf with a chicken drumstick, they could not help crying out in alarm for fear that the child would be bitten. Manman turned his head and made a wry face at them. His crisp voice sounded naughty, making a fuss about nothing. Lei Tie shot him a glance. Manman. Manman stuck out his tongue, yet towards the two scholars, he showed a sweet smile. With his small hand patting Dian Bai's head, he said in a proud tone, "Uncles don't have to be afraid, Dian Bai is raised by our family, very well behaved." Yuan solemnly cupped his fist in another hand and said in deadpan but earnest soft childish voice, "My Didi is still young, please excuse him, uncles." Lei Xiangji, Chu Zongwen, Escort Zhang, and the other guests in the inn couldn't help laughing heartily and praising their adorableness. The two scholars' eyes were opened wide, almost petrified. Are these two children truly only 3 to 4 years old? Qin Mian rubbed the heads of the two little boys and then cupped his hands at the two men from a distance. "My son is naughty, please forgive him." The two scholars waved their hands, "It's fine, it's fine." After they finished eating, Escort Zhang and his 3 men came to Qin Mian's table. Qin Mian and Lei Tie ate slower than the others because they had to take care of Yuan and Manman at the same time. "Young Master Qin, young Master Lei." Qin Mian stood up and said, "Big brothers, have all of you eaten well?" "Yes." Young Master Qin. Escort Zhang sat down on the empty bench beside him and said without being long-winded, "If everything goes according to plan, we'll pass by the Burial Flower Mountain Ridge tomorrow afternoon." Burial Flower Mountain Ridge is one of the most dangerous places as bandits abounds that way. In the past, 7 out of 10 times we would encounter trouble there. Tomorrow, you two must take good care of the children. Qin Mian calmly said, "Thanks for Escort Zhang's reminder. Tie and myself will take good care of them." Lei Tie nodded to Escort Zhang, the look in his eyes was calm and his breath was still like a mountain. Yuan and Manman, being the two clever kids, gave thanks in unison, "Thank you, uncle." Escort Zhang didn't know of Qin Mian and Lei Tie's skills at all. In fact, he was very worried that the existence of the two children would delay them, but it was not good to say that. Now, looking at the two lovely little boys again, his worries eased up somehow. If Qin Mian and Lei Tie had no real skills, how would they dare to take risks with their own sons? He happily touched Yuan's little head. "You're welcome. The uncles will protect you in due course." The night passed without incident. The next day, after everyone was ready, they set out again. A trade caravan that was staying in the same inn as them were also packing to leave. The two scholars they met yesterday were with the caravan. Qin Mian knew that the two scholars probably had some misgivings, which was why they travelled together with the caravan. The two groups left the inn one after the other and went out of the town. Taking advantage of the good weather, Qin Mian's procession stopped once in the middle of the journey to make it convenient for everyone. Later, they would not stop again. Lunch was also taken in the carriage. Qin Mian and Lei Tie each carried Yuan and Manman to ride on their horses and then played games, so that the boys wouldn't feel bored. It was unknown as to why the procession at the back always maintained a fixed distance from the front procession. When the front procession stopped, they also stopped. As per escort Zhang's expectation, approximately at the end of the hour of way, a mountain ridge appeared in front of them. The two mountains were like two parallel vertical lines, sandwiching the public road in the middle. When they raised their heads to look up, they saw that the two mountains were covered with flowers in spring. The garish display of flowers eagerly bloomed, splendid in many postures that nothing more beautiful could be imagined. The spring breeze blew unhurriedly as the petals of every color under the sun floated and fell, accumulating a thin layer on the ground. However, the silence and grey shadows around the valley added an eerie atmosphere. Those brightly colored flowers also seemed not so beautiful but instead permeated with the breath of death. It was no wonder that this place was called the Burial Flower Mountain Ridge. /Note, hour of way is 1 to 3 p.m. The four carriages slowed down, unknowingly. Stop! Riding on horseback at the front of the procession, escort Zhang's sharp eyes flickered with a glint as he surveyed both sides without batting an eyelid. Intending to let Lei Qinshun and Lei Qinzhong display their strength, Lei Tie shot them a glance. Lei Qinzhong and Lei Qinshun nodded, steered their horses to escort Zhang and said in a low voice, "Escort Zhang, we will lead the way with you." Escort Zhang had a good opinion of Qin Mian and Lei Tie at the bottom of his heart. If Qin Mian and Lei Tie only let the four escorts clear the way, they would feel uncomfortable at the bottom of their hearts. "Lei Qin Lei, our carriage will be the last in line," ordered Lei Tie. "Yes." Lei Tie needed Qin Mian's hand. "Wife, you take care of Yuan and Manman. Rest assured." Qin Mian let Yuan and Manman sit astride on his two thighs respectively. He and Lei Tie had already caught the presence of many people in the trees on the mountain. Escort Zhang's skill was only average compared to them, but his instinct for danger was highly commendable. Yuan and Manman were not afraid at all. They clapped their four little hands as if they were playing. "Sons, some bad people will try to bully us later. Scared or not?" Qin Mian first forewarned the two children so they won't get frightened by the clamor on the outside. Yuan and Manman shook their heads without showing a sign of fear and simultaneously looked at Lei Tie. "Lao Dai is very powerful. He can drive the bad people away," said Manman with pride. Yuan nodded his head in agreement. Lei Tie's lips were slightly curved as he looked at Qin Mian with a little meaning of showing off. Qin Mian coldly stared at him and asked the two children with a grievance, "Is this Dai not powerful?" Manman hesitated for a moment. Dai is also powerful. Dai can cook, but neither Manman nor Gurgur can. Lei Tie laughed in silence. Stabbed by his son, Qin Mian ruthlessly glared at Lei Tie and muttered while fuming with rage between gritted teeth, "Afterward, I'll teach the children skills, and you'll be responsible for cooking." Lei Tie's face turned rigid. "Wife." Qin Mian ignored him. Lei Tie took advantage of Yuan and Manman's inattention to get closer and kissed the corner of his wife's mouth. "Wife, you are more powerful, you understand that? You're the one who conquer me, how is that not powerful?" The temperature on Qin Mian's face suddenly rose. "First, don't be anxious," said escort Zhang to Lei Qinzhong and Lei Qinshun as he took a faint glance at the group behind them. Between the two processions, the bandits would know at a glance that the caravans had more benefit to earn from, so the caravans were in a more dangerous situation than them. Under this kind of situation, if the other party looked on without lifting a finger, they should not expect to get help later on. If the caravan people were smart enough, they should take the initiative to cooperate. After a while, a man trotted over on horseback. Sure enough, he came to discuss cooperation. After the discussion, the two groups became one. The people with combat capability were evenly distributed around the procession to protect all the carriages. Escort Zhang told the scholars not to panic and run all over the place no matter what happened. It was impossible for scholars not to be nervous. Lei Xiangji, knowing that his Dagur and eldest sister-in-law were powerful, comforted others without looking scared in the slightest. On the whole, everyone was very composed. Escort Zhang was very satisfied before he and the man named Feng Cheng from the caravan led the procession in the front and entered the narrow passageway. When the procession arrived at the middle of the narrow passageway, there was a loud rallying cry sound that came from the mountain. More than 40 mountain bandits rushed down the mountain and surrounded the procession like wrapping a dumpling. To their surprise, these mountain bandits' skills were not weak. However, Escort Zhang and his men were not blindly escorting people, and Feng Cheng's 8 guards were also experts. Although the fight was fierce, the mountain bandits not only didn't get any benefit but also lost 7 to 8 men. LIAN didn't even get off the carriage as he hit the leader with an arrow right in the middle of his brow. The mountain bandits' morale was completely destroyed, they quickly fled without leaving any trace behind. Escort Zhang looked toward Qin Mian's carriage with admiration and felt even more at ease for the next journey. He raised his voice and asked, "Is anyone hurt?" Bulletin King Yun poked his head out of the carriage. "Brother Zhang, there's none. We're all fine. Thanks to all of you." Lei Qin Lei also said in a loud voice, "It's all right over here." 2 people from the caravan were slightly injured, but it was not a big deal. Without delay, everyone immediately went out of the passageway, lest the mountain bandits swung around and caught them off guard. Not a while later, when the procession rushed out of the passageway, several more rapid horses' hoofs suddenly sounded from behind. Lei Qinzhong took a look back and reported to the carriage, "Eldest master and little master, it's a small caravan of 5 men." Lei Qinshun snorted, "These people are so close to us. I'm afraid that they had deliberately waited until we killed and scattered the mountain bandits before they come over." Lei Qinzhong also had this thought, but nothing could be done about it. "It's a good thing that we're not hurt. We can't deal with so many of them." The sound of the horses' hooves came nearer and nearer. In a short time, the horses came to the front of the procession and galloped past. Lei Qinshun casually glanced at the people on the horses, and his whole body expressed surprise as he looked at the back of those people in astonishment. "What's the matter?" asked Lei Qinzhong casually. Lei Qinshun lowered his voice and spoke in an uncertain tone, "The man on the leading horse. He looks like little master. I could be mistaken though." Qin Mian and Lei Tie had good hearing. They overheard him and looked at each other in surprise. The world was so big and people had look-alikes. Besides, Lei Qinshun might have been mistaken. Therefore, Qin Mian didn't pay it any mind. The fleet of carriages and caravans went northward. After they got familiar with each other, they learned that the caravans were going to the capital. However, Qin Mian and his party had less load, so they traveled fast. After traveling with the caravans for a day, they separated. 5 days later, the fleet of carriages arrived in Jinshui City. Jinshui City was a big city. Escort Zhang proposed to have a good rest here for a day and everyone had no objection. It was only 2 or 3 days away from the capital, so there was no need to rush like before. The closer to the capital, the stronger the atmosphere of the spring exam was. The streets of Jinshui City were full of scholars and most of them were resting in Jinshui City just like Qin Mian's party. Escort Zhang led the procession to stop in front of the Good Luck Coming In's entrance. Yuan and Manman couldn't wait to get off. "I want to go down." Lei Tie easily picked up the 2 little boys at the same time. "Wife, I'm taking them down first." "All right." Qin Mian took out a bundle and handed it to Lei Qinzhong before locking the carriage's door and windows. "Dear guests, please come inside." The waiter came out to welcome people and was astonished as he took in the 2 impressive carriages. He greeted them warmly and upon seeing 2 children that were exactly alike, his mouth spoke good words, "These little young masters both look cute and smart. The young masters are so blessed." Lei Tie slightly nodded. "Thank you very much." Qin Mian smiled at the waiter and straightened the hats on the boys' heads. As soon as Qin Mian got to the door, he came face to face with a young man. Qin Mian unintentionally stared at the other person as both of them were stunned. Several bystanders were also stunned because the two men were so alike that they looked almost identical except for the eyebrows and eyes. Qin Mian's eyebrows were thick but not messy and looked very heroic, while his eyes were large and round, and seemed bright and sharp. In short, they were nice to look at. The other young man's eyebrows were rather light and his single eyelids matched with a pair of long and narrow red phoenix eyes with his slightly squinting appearance looking rather gloomy. Moreover, the two of them were not of similar age as the young man appeared to be 4 or 5 years older than Qin Mian. End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 148. Adorable radish costume. The young man's pupils suddenly shrank with his thoughts unreadable though he appeared to be a little surprised. In a single breath, the look in the young man's eyes changed but it did not escape Lei Tie's notice. Lei Tie took hold of Qin Mian's hand, squeezed it and led him forward. Qin Mian was surprised to see a man who looked like him with his own eyes. Out of politeness, he nodded to the man and followed Lei Tie into the inn. Lei Qin Shun and the others quickly followed them. The young man watched them disappear on the stairs before he turned and left. After the waiter had led them to their guest room, Qin Mian asked the waiter to send hot water over. Lei Tie put Yuan and Manman down. When the waiter left, he hesitated for a moment but said it nonetheless, "Wife, that person most likely know you." Qin Mian was taken aback. "How so?" "He seemed shocked and suspicious when he saw you. As if, it was very unexpected to see you." Lei Tie's wording was very distinct. Yuan and Manman didn't know what their dads were talking about. They ran around in the spacious guest room full of energy, chasing after Dian Bai. Yuan and Manman, run slowly. Be careful not to fall." While Qin Mian and Lei Tie were talking, they did not forget to pay attention to their two sons. Could he be a relative? Lei Tie went over and put his arms around his wife's waist. "Wife, do you want to find your family?" Qin Mian took the opportunity to encircle his man's neck and shook his head. "You know where I came from." He didn't know why this body appeared alone in Green Mountain Village at the beginning, or whether it would be a good thing for him and the other party if he found the original owner's family. Therefore, he never wanted to take the initiative to go looking for them, but let nature take its course. Lei Tie hugged him tightly and caressed Qin Mian's face with his big palm. Then he pecked Qin Mian's ear gently and then said slowly, "Wife, maybe I'm selfish, so I don't want other people to take away your attention. As long as I have you, you can only have me." Qin Mian's heart was comforted and he kissed his man on the chin. Knowing that his man had just made a slip of the tongue, Qin Mian still wanted to tease him. "Well, don't you want your sons?" Lei Tie's face flashed a bit of embarrassment. "I mean, besides our family of 4, others are not needed." Qin Mian simmered with laughter, patted his man on his back and rubbed his cheek against the man's neck. "Well, I'm not sure if that person is related to me. Why do we have to fret over it? Maybe we're just people who look alike. We go out to sightsee, don't let our mood be affected by others." Lei Tie dragged Qin Mian to the back of the column and kissed him for a long time. Before Yuan and Manman came over full of curiosity, Lei Tie had let go of him. "Ah Dai, what are you doing with Lao Dai?" asked Manman as he blinked, looking very cunning. Qin Mian pretended to be unperturbed and rubbed his little head, doing nothing. "I saw you two hugging each other. Isn't that right, Gurgur?" Manman turned to look at his Gurgur with his pigtail flinging along. Yuan nodded. Qin Mian crossed his arms over his chest and pretended to be angry as he glared. "What? You allow Lao Dai to hug you but he isn't allowed to hug me?" Lei Tie looked at them quietly with his eyes full of softness and satisfaction. Having a lover and sons such as them, what more could he ask for? Grinning, Manman took Qin Mian's hand and shook it. "Allow Lao Dai to hug Ah Dai. Lao Dai, you can hug Ah Dai again." Qin Mian was embarrassed. Isn't it like lifting a rock and hitting yourself in the foot? Looking unperturbed, LIAN drew his wife into his arms. Qin Mian had no choice but to look at the sky. Honored guest, your hot water is here. Qin Mian pushed LIAN away and mischievously blocked Manman, who was trying to catch up with his gurgur. Dai, let me go. Qin Mian held back his laughter as he looked at the little boy leaning forward like a frog on his arms in a struggle. Seeing that his son's mouth was about to pout, Qin Mian patted his little bottom and let him go. You little rascal! Asterisk. They had arrived in Jinshui City in the morning and stayed there for one night. The next morning after breakfast, they continued the journey. Surprisingly, the young man they had met before set out only 2 steps later than them. Later, he always stayed about a li behind them. Qin Mian couldn't help but wonder if the other man was indeed related to him. However, he and LIAN both decided to be on alert and make no move. As long as the other party did not come to trouble them, they were not interested in taking the initiative to get involved with him. Nothing happened throughout the journey. In the morning 3 days later, the procession could already see the tall wall of the capital from a distance. Everyone sighed with relief. Escort Zhang and his men all showed a relaxed smile on their faces. The scholars they escorted who had managed to get the qualification to come to the capital for the examination, were all talented people, so they were under a lot of pressure along the way. If the scholars were not well protected, not only would these scholars be harmed, but their conscience would hurt, too. Eventually, they arrived in the capital. Huo Siryui's carriage slowed down and went side by side with Qin Mian's. He poked his head out of the window. Dagur, eldest sister-in-law. What's it? Asked Qin Mian as he stretched out his head. Huo Siryui said, eldest sister-in-law, my father has written to his friend in the capital earlier, asking him to make a reservation for us. It's just that I have to pay a visit first and ask which inn it is. I'll go ahead on horseback. Qin Mian nodded, all right, sorry to trouble you. Lei Qin Shun, go with young master Huo. Yes, little master. Lei Qin Zhong jumped onto the shaft of the carriage and gave his horse to Huo Siryui. Huo Siryui and Lei Qin Shun galloped away on horseback. Dad, have we arrived? Asked Yuan while leaning on the window. Almost there. Qin Mian pointed to the wall in the distance. Son, do you see that? That's where we're going. When the time comes, ask your Lao Dai to treat us to a delicious meal. Yuan's face showed a lovely smile. I want to see it, too. Manman mischievously leaned on his gurgur's back. LIAN held him in time. The 2 brothers were excited and began to chatter again. Qin Mian simply gave up his seat to them and let them sit side by side in front of the window to see the scenery outside. Dianbai had been on the ride for a long time that it looked somewhat sullen, lazily lying on the ground. Qin Mian rubbed its head in comfort. Dianbai, hold on for a while. We'll arrive soon. Dianbai nodded its head and obediently lay down. Tie, is that person still following us? Qin Mian sat next to LIAN. LIAN embraced him with ease and nodded. Qin Mian smiled rather amusingly. It seems that he has some qualms about me. But as long as he doesn't come to provoke us, we don't have to mess with him. LIAN's voice sounded cold. It's fine if he didn't mean any harm. If he did, I'll make him regret it. Qin Mian kissed his face and started to sort out their family of 4's luggage. When Yuan and Manman didn't pay attention, he took out some of the things that had been temporarily put in the magical space. Less than an hour later, the procession arrived at the city gate. On a closer look, the city wall stood more than 30 chi high, all of which were made of big grey stones, looking imposingly tall, sturdy, and spectacular. On the city wall, solemn-looking soldiers holding spears stood straight like bamboos. The gate was about 30 chi wide and a stone plaque above it was engraved with deep and clear characters for Capital City in vigorous touches and fine strokes, appearing grand and magnificent. Inside the city gate, pedestrians and vehicles came and went. It was very lively. After the soldiers guarding the gate checked their travel permits, the procession followed the stream of people into the city wall. Even Mian couldn't help but look out at the window and inwardly praised. The capital city deserved to be called the country's important city. The streets were paved with stone slabs, which were clean and spacious that could accommodate at least 4 carriages side by side. This did not include the area where the vendors were on both sides of the street. Pedestrians and vehicles, whether coming in or out, all walked on the right side. It seemed methodically arranged. The shops on both sides of the street were not comparable to those in small counties. Most of them were 2-story buildings. Even the smallest shops were very orderly sorted out, and the silk banners fluttering at the shops' entrances were bigger than those in other places. Among the people who came and went, most of them were young masters in splendid clothes. They walked slowly with their heads held high, and looks carried inherent nobility and arrogance. From time to time, there was an exquisite 4 men carrying palanquin or a luxury carriage unhurriedly passed by. Mian almost lamented. Fortunately, he and LIAN were rich people now. They were all neat and tidy. Otherwise, they would be embarrassed to walk on the streets of the capital city. Upon hearing the voices of escort Zhang and Huo Sirui, he looked ahead and found that Huo Sirui was back. Besides Lei Shun, there was a youth dressed as a manservant, who was probably sent over by Dean Huo's good friend. The procession followed Huo Sirui and stopped at the entrance of Swan Goose Path Inn. The attendant who stood at the entrance of the inn to welcome the guests, saw the incoming guests and immediately put on a warm and friendly smile on his face as he spryly welcomed them. His eyes were unconsciously attracted by the most unusual carriage. When that carriage stopped, the door opened from the side. The attendant was surprised. The first one to jump out of the carriage was a dog, no, a wolf, strong and powerful, with fierce eyes. It looked around in carefreely and leisurely, then smartly sat down on the ground. It turned a deaf ear to the cries of alarm from the passers-by. Its appearance of raising its eyelids and glancing sideways permeated haughtiness. At this time, a 3-layered wooden step suddenly extended from the bottom of the carriage. A young man slowly stepped down from the carriage. The man was about 26 to 27 years old, with dashing eyebrows and bright eyes. Unfortunately, there was an ugly scar on his cold face. The black robe covering his tall and well-built body made his indifference aura more intense that people dared not approach him easily. The man turned to face the carriage and his cold face softened as he stretched out his hands and took a child out of the carriage. The child was about 3 or 4 years old. On his pinkish face, his big black eyes were full of agility. His dress was very unique. He wore a red hat on his head with several pieces of cloth in the shape of green leaves on the top, a small red short padded jacket on his upper body with only the sleeves in light blue color, and a pair of trousers which was also in 2 colors, red from waist to the buttock and light blue below the buttock. When the red of the jacket and the trousers were connected, the whole person looked like a plump big red radish, oh so adorable. End chapter. Minwei Qi Nan. Chapter 149. Lao Dai, don't eat Dai. The man reached out his hands again and unexpectedly carried out an identical child. The 2 children who looked like big radishes, one with a poker face and the other with a smiling face, who held hands while looking around in curiosity. The wolf stood up and brushed the back of the 2 children with its tail from time to time, very intimately. The attendant's eyes stared blankly. For a moment, he forgot to step forward, thinking that he had enriched his experience today. Noticing that the man was still looking inside the carriage, the waiter could not help but keep on watching. Another man came down from the carriage. He was also a young man of about 18 or 19 years old, with thick eyebrows and large, round eyes. He looked heroic and tall, dressed in a white robe, appearing handsome, noble and graceful. "Tie, let's go in." Mian held Yuan's little hand. Manman obediently handed his hand to his Lao Dai. The fathers and sons walked up the steps neither fast nor slow, and Dian Bai followed without haste. Lei Tie faintly glanced into the distance. The young man, who looked very much like Qin Mian, watched Qin Mian enter Swan Goose Path Inn and turned his horse around to leave. The attendant finally came to his senses and stepped forward to welcome them. He looked at the wolf with vigilance and awkwardness. "Young masters, welcome to Swan Goose Path Inn." This. Sorry, I forgot for a moment." Qin Mian stopped after 2 steps, Lei Qin Shun. Dian Bai did not allow people other than its 4 masters to touch it. Lei Qin Shun quickly came and handed Dian Bai's tether to Qin Mian. Lei Tie then put it on Dian Bai's neck and held it. The attendant gratefully glanced at Qin Mian. In the capital city, high officials and dignitaries were everywhere. Many princes, dukes, and nobles were as numerous as the dogs. As an inn's attendant, he had seen a lot of arrogant and domineering patrons. A patron who treated such a big wolf as a pet must not be an ordinary person. He thought he was going to be scolded again today, but he didn't expect that not only the young master spoke so nicely, he also went as far as to apologize to him, a servant. The attendant's smile grew more sincere. "Honored guests, please come inside." When Dian Bai stood on its 4 feet, its back was as high as Lei Tie's waist, its well-built body was strong and its jet-black hair was shiny. When it slowly strode, it appeared arrogant, its gait was firm and its Wolf King's aura was fully displayed. Inadvertently, everyone's eyes were attracted to follow it, looking at its 2 masters and the 2 children, admiring them in secret. Manman strode forward with head high and chest out, sweetly smiling at all the people who watched him and waved his little hand from time to time. Many guests were amused. Qin Mian amusedly shook his head. If this little boy was born in modern times and wore a pair of sunglasses, he might be a child star. Although Yuan was very quiet, his sense of existence was not lesser than his ditty. His expressionless little face that showed a calm and steady bearing like a little adult was praiseworthy. Huo Siryui came over with the manservant, Dagur, and Mian Gur. "I'll take you all to your rooms." Qin Mian rewarded the attendant with a handful of copper coins. The attendant promptly said, "If the young masters need anything, please call this servant at any time." Dean Huo's good friend had reserved heavenly-sized rooms for them on the 2nd floor. The heavenly-sized room was a suite, which could meet the needs of some guests with an entourage. It would be very convenient for the masters to order their servants whenever. In addition to the largest room, there were 4 smaller rooms. Huo Siryui gave Qin Mian's family the room with the most abundant light and was ready to arrange the others' rooms. Qin Mian stopped him and said, "Siryui, Uncle Huo's good friend has helped us a lot. Do you think it's convenient for us to visit him and thank him in person?" Huo Siryui thought for a moment. "I heard from my father that Uncle Yuan pays most attention to etiquette. If it's all right with Dagur and eldest sister-in-law, we'll go together after lunch. I'll let the manservant go back to inform him first." "That should be fine." Qin Mian asked how much it cost to book the room and gave the money to Huo Siryui for him to deliver. After Huo Siryui left, Qin Mian asked the waiter to bring hot water. The family of 4 took a good hot bath with a ladle of spiritual spring water put into the bathtub, which not only dispelled fatigue but also nourished one's body. Yuan and Manman's favorite thing was to take a bath. They played in the tub until the water was almost cold. Qin Mian and Lei Tie picked them up, wiped them clean, and changed them into clean inner clothes. For outer clothes, they still wore the radish costumes they just changed into yesterday. The 2 children's cheeks were as red as apples. Qin Mian couldn't help kissing them. Yuan and Manman were so ticklish they giggled. They rushed to their Lao Dai's arms to hide. "Don't run, the little rabbit will eat the red radishes." Qin Mian howled and went over. Yet, he didn't notice that his flushed face due to the hot bath was also delicious to Lei Tie. "Lao Dai, help!" Yuan and Manman giggled and hid behind Lei Tie's body. "Don't be afraid, Lao Dai will eat up the little white rabbit." Lei Tie grabbed Qin Mian's arm. locked him in his embrace, turned his back to the two little boys, and kissed Qin Mian on the lips. "Oh, Lao Dai eats up the rabbit," cheered Manman. Being deeply kissed by Lai Tie, Qin Mian couldn't escape. He could only stare at the man with ferocious eyes. Didn't this guy say that he wanted to do fewer intimate acts in front of the children? Yuan looked up for a long time and began to cry. Qin Mian quickly pushed Lai Tie away. He squatted down in front of the little boy and hugged him in worry. "Son, what's the matter?" Lai Tie stood there, feeling a little embarrassed. "Lao Dai," Yuan sniffed and looked at Lai Tie in tears. "Don't eat Dai." Pfft! Qin Mian thought it was inappropriate to laugh when his son was sad, but he couldn't help it at all. Yuan. Dear. Haha. Lao Dai didn't. Pfft. Owa being laughed at by his Dai, Yuan cried even more. Manman looked at his Lao Dai and then at his Dai. Seeing that his Gurgur was crying so sadly, he thought that something bad that he didn't know of had happened, so he opened his mouth and began to cry, too. Qin Mian froze at once. Lai Tie went over, took the big and two small ones into his arms, and patted their backs to placate. "Don't cry." This time, Qin Mian couldn't laugh anymore, so he quickly explained to the two little boys, "Lao Dai didn't eat Dai. It was a game just now." Yuan and Manman don't remember. Yuan had come back to his senses now. He closed his mouth and didn't cry anymore. However, the tears were still rolling down and his head was lowered. He looked very embarrassed. Manman always followed his Gurgur's steps. He stopped crying and hugged his Gurgur, comfortingly. Qin Mian breathed a sigh of relief and slapped Lai Tie on his back. "It's your fault. I'm sorry." Lai Tie honestly admitted his mistake, pecked at his wife's forehead, and then kissed Yuan and Manman's foreheads. Yuan lowered his head and pulled Manman to walk away quickly. Qin Mian wanted to laugh again but quickly held himself back. He looked at the back of the two little boys and helplessly shook his head. The child is only a little older but already have self-esteem. "Go and wash their faces." Lai Tie obediently went. Qin Mian quietly took Dian Bai into the magical space and let it wash well. When he came out of the space, Lai Tie, Yuan, and Manman had taken off their shoes and were playing jigsaw puzzles on the bed. Children were forgetful. Having forgotten the embarrassment from before, the two boys had a smile on their small faces. "Are you hungry, sons? Let's go downstairs to eat." After having lunch in the inn, Huo Siryui and Lei Xiongji went to buy gifts. Qin Mian and Lai Tie took their two children for a walk near the inn and went back to their room. They took a long time choosing from among the items they brought and decided to give a jar of wine and a bottle of fermented tofu to Dean Huo's good friend. After Huo Siryui and Lei Xiongji came back, Qin Mian, Lai Tie, Yuan, Manman, Huo Siryui, Lei Xiongji, Chu Zongwen, Buletin Qingyun, and Zhao Tianhe went to visit Dean Huo's good friend's home. Since Dian Bai was not used to densely crowded places, Qin Mian did not feel assured leaving it in the inn, so he took it with them. Dean Huo's good friend was surnamed Yuan with courtesy name Anqi. The Yuan residence was on the street behind the street where Swan Goose Path Inn was located. The spring exam was a sensitive period. It was easy for students to arouse others' suspicions if they visited officials. However, because Yuan Anqi was only a fifth-rank official, he was neither qualified to attend the imperial court nor had access to the classified information of the spring exam office, so there was no problem to visit him. Since Huo Siryui had sent the Yuan residence's manservant to inform of their arrival in advance, when they arrived at the Yuan residence and gave his surnamed, the gatekeeper invited them in right away. In the Yuan residence's front courtyard was a small garden, planted with a few flowering trees and a variety of flowers. In the middle was a wide bluestone path leading to the front house. On the way, they met an old woman dressed in extraordinary clothes walking in the courtyard, followed by two young maids. The manservant bowed to salute. "Greetings, old madam." Qin Mian and his party cupped their hands in respect. "Greetings, old Madam Yuan." The old madam looked kind and said with a smile, "Are you here to visit my son? No need to be polite." As soon as her eyes fell on Yuan and Manman, her face immediately showed fondness. She slightly bent down and her voice became softer. "Oh my, whose children are these? They're adorable." Yuan and Manman came forward hand in hand. "Greetings, Grandma. I'm Yuan. Greetings, Grandma. I'm Manman." "Oh, it's Yuan and Manman. Good gracious, how charming." The old lady's eyes were filled with kindness. She couldn't help reaching out her hands as if to hold them. As if thinking of something, she stepped back a few steps and apologetically smiled at Qin Mian and Lei Tie. "Look at me, old and confused. I don't want to infect the children with my cold, so I won't delay your business. Go ahead." The old madam smiled at Yuan and Manman again. One could see that she really liked them. Then, she took the two maids with her in the other direction. End chapter.